Okay, welcome back, you guys. This is week 2 of Dr. Will Little. If you missed last week's and you kind of don't know exactly where this fits in the scheme of things, this is a checklist of things that need to be done before closing on a practice acquisition. So, George, is this relevant to you at all right now in your life?
Oh, yeah. I am going through that process right now.
Has it set in holy crap, this is going to be a lot of work?
Yeah, I think it was towards the beginning of the year. I met with my sellers, and that was really the first time we kind of picked up, talking to each other again. And I was like, oh man, this is really happening. And no, it's fun. I'm excited.
We're in January, February of 2018, and you're going to graduate in about May. And what's your target date for walking into this practice with you and your wife?
So I think I'll boot that conversation to the outro. Because it's relevant to a lot of the topics that you guys talk about in the episode. But yeah, so stick around to the outro, and then I'll talk about that in the outro.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's get into the interview then. Here is Dr. Will Little with things you need to do before closing on your acquisition. Okay, we have back with us Dr. Will Little. Thanks for coming back to keep chugging through this chaotic, hectic, fun time that we call closing. We're now in phase 2. So this is almost like a little bit of the craziness of negotiation, of lending, all of that is kind of starting to settle down, and we're getting into the details. Is that fair enough to say?
Absolutely. So this is when you get down the nitty gritty. This is where your preparation really comes into play here. This is when it's time to get prepared, for that closing day, so that when you sign those papers, the seller doc leaves and you're looking at the staff and, you got patients on the books, you are ready to go. You're ready to make your practice a machine. You're ready to make it your own. You're legal, you're set up, and it's time for you to get in there and start working on that practice that you got, so that you work so hard to get. So there's some steps here that you need to do, in between that practice purchase agreement signing and the closing. And I'm ready to dive into those aspects. This portion gets a little tedious, but man, it's super, super, super important to get these ducks in a row before you sign those papers, and it's actually yours.
Okay, so let's dive in here. One thing you had was getting legal, so getting the entity and all of that. For someone who's never, it's ironic. Sometimes you can get through dental school and you maybe have had a couple jobs, but you've never owned a business. Mm-hmm. What does this mean to have an entity, and why does it matter? What are the implications of all this?
Yeah, I mean, so entities, obviously, there's separate ways you can do things. Any business, you can be a sole proprietorship, meaning, you don't have an entity set up. It's, yourself. However,
I'm just doing business out of my garage. I'm
doing business out of my
surgical
garage.
Guides off of my podcasting desk, which I'm not, because the Army would be mad at me.
Absolutely. But yeah, so you can do that. Obviously, I don't know just tons and tons and tons about this portion of it, because this really isn't my specialty.
Sure.
However, it's but each as you build an entity, you're building separation from yourself. You're building a layer in between yourself and this business, so that, and you get certain protections, when you have an entity. So, you definitely want to set up some form of entity. I would talk to the necessary people, as far as lawyer / accountant, to figure out which one you want to be. I will tell you what we did, and that way, somebody at least has an idea.
Sure.
But we have formed, PLLCs, professional limited liability corporations, for each of our dental practices that we have. Now, from that, we can choose. We can choose to be taxed as an S corporation, and so that's just a form. It's an IRS form that you fill out once you form your PLLC. You can form your PLLC by yourself if you know a little bit about it, or you can have your lawyer do that for you. It's not complicated. It shouldn't be crazy expensive to set up a PLLC, even if you have a lawyer do it. And then if you're going to work in the practice, you want to be, in our experience, you want to be an S corporation, because what that allows you to do is allows you to pay yourself a salary for being a dentist, and then take the rest of the profits above that in distributions, and distributions have tax benefits. So that's the reason why you do it.
As capital gains or something else?
It's taxed as ordinary income. The deal is you don't have to pay you don't have to pay self-employment taxes on those. So your company matches, your your extra self-employment taxes you don't have to pay on the distribution. So you're going to save, a few percentage points on taxes when, in our profession, ideally we're making quite a bit of money. A couple of percentage points is a huge deal. It's a huge deal to anybody, but, more so obviously at some of these income levels and big practices. And, because if you got a practice that, profits $300,000 and you pay yourself, $180,000, which is usual, customary, fair, reasonable for a dentist.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to get a tax break on that extra 120. So, do yourself a favor and take the time to be properly, to have a proper entity that you're comfortable with, that the tax benefits of, so that you are comfortable, whenever you're paying tax, you're doing the best for yourself.
So you guys, and this isn't tax or legal advice for
anyone,
anyone, but you guys did PLLC taxed as an S corp. So
correct.
For a patient, that sounds like MOD and an RCT on number 31.
Yeah.
But if you walk into an accountant or a lawyer and say those words, they're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we can do that." Like that's
we can
super
do that.
easy.
That's non-issue. That's a non-issue. Yeah, I mean everything. I mean, you'll see it on dental. On all the you see comma PA, comma PLLC. I mean, those are their corporations. That's why it's on there. And S corporation, especially if you're in a partnership. PLLC. The reason why we didn't keep them as PLLCs is because when you're in an LLC format, you can't put yourself on the payroll. Like you can't give yourself a W-2 if you're a PLLC or an LLC. So, for us, especially Hunter and I, when we do dentistry, we pay ourselves as associates. That way it's fair. We do 35% of the collections of the dentistry that we do, you get paid for. So if you go do a bunch of dentistry, if you have a partner and you go do $100,000 worth of dentistry and he does 50, well, then you're going to be paid more on your percentage.
Sure.
So we run that through payroll, and that goes into, that goes through payroll, and, you'll get a W-2 for that. And same thing as, when you set up your S corp, if you want to pay yourself a salary, or you don't have to pay yourself a percentage at that point, because you're not having to worry about being fair to a partner or anything else. You're going to pay yourself a certain amount. You're going to get a W-2 for that, and then everything above that will be distributions, which you'll have to get to pay less taxes on. So.
And it seems like some of this could also have like retirement implications in terms of how you can save money, and
sure.
That is why you definitely want to talk with people about this.
Yeah. Educate yourself. Once again, I mean, I'll say this a bunch. I mean, this is your business. This is your life, man. Get educated on it. If it may not be you may not know, what exactly you want to do to begin with, but don't stick your head in the sand on it. Talk to somebody that knows what's going on. Your situation may be different than somebody else's. Get educated on it, because, this is, when you decide to buy a practice, this is the stuff that you're signing up for, which is, it's the stuff I love. This is the stuff this is the stuff that's great. But, educate yourself about these entities, what's better, why, what's going to pay more taxes, why is it taxed at this rate, learn about them so that, when you are when you're getting taxed on this, you have the ability to know what's going on. So anyway.
So then the next part of that was to get a federal tax ID number. So you could probably do that also with an accountant, or probably your accountant, but even a lawyer, if they're setting up the PLLC and the S corp and all, they can probably help you with that as well. But that's kind of, you need those to exist to the federal government as someone who's making money and paying taxes.
For sure. The federal tax ID number is your business's social security number. You have a social security number, and your business has a tax ID number, and that's the same. That's basically the same thing, when it comes to your corporation. So there's several numbers that you're going to need. Number one, you're going to need that federal tax ID number. Number two, each provider, for all you dentists out there, what an NPI is. For all you dental students, you probably don't yet. Your NPI is your National Provider ID number. That is, a number that goes with you, wherever you practice. You have a provider ID number. Type 1 is yourself. I'm William Little, DDS, and my Type 1 NPI number, wherever I go, wherever I practice. A pharmacy may ask for your NPI. Insurance companies will want you to put your NPI on claims. That attaches to yourself,
Sure.
The provider. The Type 2 NPI goes along with your company. So if you have an entity, if you have a PLLC, that company will have a Type 2 NPI. So you will have two, as an owner of a dental practice, you'll have two NPI numbers. You'll have one for yourself, or if you go associate somewhere, whatever, anywhere you practice, that NPI goes with you. Your Type 2 NPI is for your entity, and it stays with the entity. If you close that entity, sell the practice, that type 2 NPI goes away.
And
you'll need those.
This is something you're going to have to do yourself. Your accountant
Correct.
or lawyer will not do these. This is like a kind of a dental specific
they might
provider
can,
thing.
but it's real easy to just pop online. You pop online and go to that NPI database, and it's all information that you'll know. No, it's quick, and they get it turned around fast for you. You'll have to have your tax ID for your type 2 NPI. So that's kind of why I ordered in this order. You're going to want to set up your entity, then do your tax ID, then do your NPIs, because it all kind of falls on each other here.
Sure.
I mean, you'll already have your type 1 NPI if you've been practicing dentistry.
Yeah,
but if you're fresh out of school,
I go into my Gmail and I like search for my NPI. And I'm like, okay, here's the email.
What is it?
Okay, this is it. Okay, now I can give it to them.
And also, if you're going to be paying people, so you're also going to have you're going to have state withholding number, because if your state has income taxes. Like our practices in Tennessee, we don't have they don't have a state tax, so we don't have to have a state withholding wage number for them.
Nice.
You'll also need an unemployment ID number, because those are things that you're going to be holding out, or you're going to be paying unemployment.
Sure.
A percentage for unemployment. You're going to be holding out money for your employee state for their withholding. So you're going to need identification numbers for those. And also, last piece of that puzzle is be sure you get your business license. That's one thing you just kind of forget about. So it's just nice to have it out there. Go get your business license wherever it is, county, city that that you're going to work in. Be sure you're legal from that local municipal standpoint.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that navigating government websites, something I've become a pro at now in the Army, but sometimes it's hard to figure out like where do I get this business license? But it's just one of those things you just got to do.
Got to do, man. Yeah, absolutely, it's part of it. So part of getting ready is loading, having that tax ID, your MPI, your withholding wage number, unemployment ID, your business license, all those things. So when you sign those papers day one, you have all those numbers and you're ready. When somebody asks you for one, it's already written down and boom, you're ready to go.
Perfect. So. Okay. So numbers, legal, got that set away. So now let's look at kind of the next beast, which is insurance.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. What a pain, right?
Right.
So it's, all right. So it's real easy for you to just walk into practice and, all right, this guy's win 11, 12 PPOs. We're just going to sign up with all of them. Okay, well, that's fine. And that may be the way it happens, but you need to know why you're doing that. Why am I signing up with these insurance companies? Because what's going to happen is they're going to be on a different fee schedule. You dental students out there, when you do a crown and your fee is $1,000, I mean, guess how many times you're actually going to get $1,000 for a crown? Very few. If you're in a PPO driven practice, when you're in network with an insurance company, that means you have negotiated a fee, and sometimes not negotiated. Sometimes they tell you what the fee schedule. I mean, every time they tell you what the fee schedule is, you've been dictated. You may can negotiate with them to, raise that fee. However, you are trading in, that's advertising essentially. I mean, because you're basically saying, I'm going to participate in this insurance. You're going to advertise for me. I'm going to be on your website. You're going to tell all your patients to come here, whatever. And it never really happens. Never really comes to fruition. That's supposedly the deal, because you're going to take a reduced fee in exchange for being a part of this network of patients. So, if you're taking a big write-off, you need to know why that is. So, number one factor in insurance participation is your capacity. What that means is how much empty spaces do you have? I mean, because obviously if you've got tons of holes in your schedule, I'd rather do a $500 crown than no crown. Right. So, I mean, if it's an office that's busy and you're super packed and, you don't have anywhere to put people, well, it's time to start thinking about those lower level insurance plans, the ones that are paying 40, 50, 60% of your fee. Can we drop one of those? Because heck, I mean, if you drop a plan that pays 50% of your usual fee, all you got to do is retain half the patients, right? And you still keep the same amount of money. So, and it's not going to be hard and fast, and you're not going to know exactly which ones to drop and which ones to stay with. But what you can do is educate yourself and figure out and number one, you need to know what they're in, what companies are they in network with, and you need to look at those fee schedules. So, when you sign that PPA and, you're going to know what they write off because you're going to have looked at the numbers. You're going to know whether it's a PPO practice or whether it's a fee for service practice, but you won't know, like, were they in network with 5 or 8 or 8 or 12, or how many in-network insurances are there? You may look at one and be like, dude, I'm not going to work for those fees. I mean, that's awful, and hey, that's fine and dandy, but you need to know before you just cut the plug, how many patients are on that insurance plan. If it's a crappy fee schedule and you've only got 50 people in your, however many thousand patient practice, well, do cut that thing. Number one, you don't have to do the paperwork, And so that's a win just at the beginning. So,
well, and so we had someone on about credentialing, but essentially the idea is you need to credential with each of these insurances, so that is credentialing synonymous with negotiating, or credentialing is just the process of like signing up and like jumping through the hoops?
Correct. So they're not the same. Credentialing, you're going to do as a new doctor, you'll have to credential with each insurance company. If you've already, let's say you've worked in a corporation, you've worked for Heartland, you're going to probably have been credentialed for each insurance company.
Sure.
Meaning, even if you're not in network with them, with your new practice, with each insurance company, when you decide to be in network with an insurance, you're going to send in your malpractice insurance certificate. You're going to send in your license. You're going to send in all these things, all these things that the insurance company requires to let you be a provider in their network. So, and that will carry with you. If you go open another practice, you will still be credentialed with the insurance company because you'll send all those things in. And then as you acquire a new practice, you won't have to be re-credentialed. You don't have to send all those things in. At that point, you can just add practices onto in-network or, whatever you want to do for that next practice. So credentialing is a one-time thing,
Per insurance.
for yourself. And then, we call it credentialing whenever you get a new practice and you're trying to get, all of those, because you're still going to have new paperwork. Because when you have a new practice, you're going to have a new tax ID, you're going to have a new MPI.
Right.
So you're still going to have to go through the paperwork again. But what you won't do as a provider, you won't have to send in. You'll be credentialed when you have your next practice, if you're going to have another practice. Even if you're in network with Delta Dental, when you get a second practice, you'll have to add that one, as a totally separate entity, separate deal. And if you go plan to practice in it, you won't have to jump through as many hoops to be a part of that insurance network.
So when so credentialing, now we've got that figured out. Negotiating insurances. So say that you look at your schedule, because we said capacity is the number one factor. You look at your schedule and you kind of have some open books, versus you look at your schedule and you're booked out, and you say you want to negotiate and or draw up plans. Do you guys do your own negotiation, or have you used people to help you analyze and negotiate these?
Well, I would actually say we've been poor at that. One of the things that we have not done a good job of, I feel like, is negotiating and really maximizing our insurance benefits at these individual practices that we have. We have since gotten better. We've done a lot of it in-house.
I was going to say, you guys do everything in-house. So that's, in my mind, it seems like one of those things that it just requires so much time and effort to like go through each plan and the fee schedule and think and compare and because maybe on one fee schedule the crowns are higher but the fillings are lower. It's what people, that's why you don't do it. I mean, that's why people don't do it. But I would just encourage you that once a month, especially if you have several insurance companies, let's at the very beginning, pick an insurance company, and that month, dive into the fee schedule, figure out, where are you getting beat on procedures, where are you getting just hammered, what fees are pretty good. And man, just even within your own practice, you have your office manager do it, but man, call them and just, Delta Dental and Blue Cross will not negotiate. If you can find somebody that's negotiated with Delta Dental and Blue Cross, please bring them on the podcast. I want to see how they did it. I want a whole episode dedicated to how they got Delta Dental to increase their fees. Deal.
Please.
I don't think I'll find them, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some companies will, some companies will play ball, most of them, and, will actually increase their fees. So, just tell them like, hey, look, these fees aren't what I can do. Let's go. Let's do something. Some will let you, increase across the board. Some will say, all right, let's pick codes, pick 20 codes. Well, you want to go through and pick your hygiene codes and some of your codes that you do a bunch of, and increase those fees. But just don't let your fees be stagnant. You don't have to be, all over them every month, every day, calling, trying to negotiate, but just don't let it be stagnant. Just pay attention to these companies that you have, and especially day one. I mean, when you're getting your fee schedule day one, first time you're looking at it, I mean, don't ever accept their first offer, right? I mean, don't ever just say, okay, sure, I'll take that one. I mean, they may not negotiate. Well, that's fine. Well, at least call and try. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, hey, this is not what I was expecting for a fee schedule. We need to negotiate this. I need a 20% raise across the board. They laugh in your face. Nah, well, I tried. If you still want to be a part of that insurance company, it may be a schedule so bad that you don't even want it if they're not going to negotiate, which is fine. And that gives you even more of a bargaining chip. Like, look, I'm literally not signing up unless you go up 20%. So, once again, it's just another thing of being involved in your business. And obviously dentistry, and we're on a podcast full of guys that want to learn about, business and dentistry. It's not, dude, it's not taboo to talk about business. It's not taboo to talk about, increase, getting better reimbursements from insurance company. That's being involved in your business and knowing the ins and outs in your business. Don't be scared to do that. This is the whole, when you own a practice, this is the whole other side of it. I mean, you want to be a great clinician. You want to take care of your patients to the best of your ability. I mean, be an ethical dentist, do a great job.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's what you're supposed to do. And that's what I hope everybody does. But also, I mean, you're selling yourself short if you don't get in here and figure out all these intricacies of your business. And one of the big ones, I mean, 95% of practices in the country, probably more than that, are primarily your primary, source of income is dental insurance money.
Yeah.
So,
if you're not understand and maximize it. So
absolutely. And we're guilty of not doing it. I mean, so it's we got 10 private. We're guilty of just, signing up with insurance companies and being kind of blind to it and going. And that's something we've been pouring on. And over the next year, especially 2018, there's going to be a big focus with us of, getting in with these, diving into our insurance fees and making sure that we're getting properly reimbursed and trying to negotiate. You guys got to
hire someone. I know you're like in-house junkies, but you just got to bring someone on that, go search the Practice in a Pod podcast directory for insurance negotiation, listen to like 7 episodes with different insurance people and call up a few of them and bring someone on. 'Cause it just,
we probably will. In all honesty, that's good advice. I mean, there's outsourced, there's ways to outsource these, obviously. I mean, there's companies that do this for you.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure they provide a great return. I can't speak on any of them because we haven't used any of them. However, that's probably smart for us. We're, I would, especially, I'd encourage you, if you want to do it yourself, I'm
it just
obviously,
seems
like you said,
not a waste of time. It just seems like a painful.
It is a painstaking process.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. It's a painstaking process. And man, there's companies that outsource it. If you need it, first outsource it before you don't do it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can do it yourself and you can deal with the process, great. Because you're going to keep more of your money in your house if you do it yourself. That's great. They'll negotiate with you. That's fine and dandy. If you want to outsource it, man, absolutely have at it, please, because just be sure you know what's going on within these insurance companies and what your reimbursements are, how many people are on each plan. Those are things you need to know that you can outsource. You need to know, you need to be able to reproduce how many patients are on these plans. What is your overall write-off that you're getting on each of these plans, and how many you're in network with, and your front office should be able to tell you how many are on each plan.
Sure.
They should be able to give you the fee schedule at any point in time when you want it. You ought to know what percent write-off or thereabouts you're taking from each of these insurance companies, and you obviously need to know how many there are. And number one, are you at capacity? Can you drop any, or are you needing to add more? I mean, because you can certainly add more. I mean, if you don't have, if you have a bunch of holes in your schedule, yeah, absolutely. You need to go to your biggest factory around there, figure out, what their, insurance that they provide to their employees is, and, become an in-network provider for them. And you may see, some patients show up from there. That's fine and dandy, so.
First, a word from our sponsor, Q Optics. Okay, we've got back with us Brent Downs from Q Optics, the director of sales. And you were about to tell me a story about a friend that you met while helping him out and showing him a product.
Yeah, I got tons of these kind of stories, but the one that sticks out to me, Dr. Kenny Crossland, he's out in West Texas. I first met him 1989, 1990, and tried to sell him a pair of loops, and he said, no, not interested.
Okay.
And over the years, I would see him at different meetings, or I'd be out in West Texas. And this went on for years and years and years. And it got to the point where I wasn't so much interested in selling anything to him.
Sure.
But we just became friends. And he has a mutual friend of mine as well. So kind of the three of us, became friends. Every time I would see him at a state meeting or a regional meeting, we weren't talking about loops. We were, catching up on family.
Sure.
And so lo and behold, in 2014, 24 years after the fact, he comes up to me and says, I want to buy some loops and headlight from you. How's that sound? And I was completely floored that he was actually ready to pull the trigger after 24 years of visiting. And so it was it was secondary to the relationship. It was a lot of fun. We still talk about it. It only took him 24 years to make a decision.
If you're the type that needs some time before you make a purchasing decision, that's totally fine. You can email sales@qoptics.com with the promo code SP16 for $100 off a pair of loops or $300 off a loops and light combo. Q Optics. Well, okay, so you can negotiate with the insurance companies to adjust your reimbursement. You can also increase your fees themselves. So that's kind of the next thing that was on your list was fee increase. So what's the danger? You know, how often do you, in these 10 practices, have you come in and they like haven't touched their fees in years? Like, is that pretty common for you to find that?
Very common, very common. So a lot of times, first thing we're doing about the practice is increase the fees or get them in the correct area. I mean, once again, you're going to need to come up with you're going to need to get a fee schedule analysis. In the past, we've used Renaissance. Our fees, number one, we use them for insurance electronic claims. So, we just have
Renaissance our fees.
Yeah, it's a service. You provide the first 3 digits of your zip code, and they send you fees based on, insurance clearinghouse, what people are sending. They gather the information from what people send in to the insurance companies as usual and customary fees, and then they compile a list from their, from the database and, attach 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 percentiles for fees in your area. And you want to try to cater your fee schedule into those percentages. So, I mean, and I'm a believer you need to have your fees up in the top portion, of your area. I mean, I think that 80 to 90% range for your fee percentiles I think that's fine. I think that's great. I mean, I think you should be proud of your fees and you should put them up there. That way you're getting a fair fee. You're not the most expensive, but you're getting fair fee, for what you're doing. I mean, unless your model is to be the cheapest dentist in town, which is certainly a model. I mean,
it is. It seems like a race to the bottom, but it can work.
It's a model. I mean, Walmart's done it very well. So, other companies and other areas of business have done it very well. I don't think it's the best route. However, that's a way to do it. But if you're not going to be the cheapest, then there's no reason to be at the 30th percentile. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you need to have your fees up in that 80 to 90% range.
That
way, that way you're not the craziest, most expensive. You're not have outrageous fees. And also it'll tell you, I mean, you may have a fee that's just exorbitant. It's way out of the realm. It's in the off the charts high for some reason that you can normalize and be still getting a fair fee, but, not charging your patients a ridiculous amount of money. So
with this, would you increase fees kind of across the board on all procedures, or are there things that you kind of like introduce a fee increase on hygiene procedures versus restorative? How do you bring this into the practice?
Yeah, that's important because, all right, so if you have a self-pay patient base, fee-for-service patient base, I mean, every patient is going to come in, they're going to pay for their hygiene visit, right? So that's one thing they're going to know what the price is. If they're a self-pay patient, they paid $192 for a pro fee exam and bite wings for however many years. They're going to know when that increases.
Sure.
So, you need to be careful if you're in a fee-for-service practice that you don't walk in and just boom, gigantically raise the fees. All of a sudden, new guy buys the practice and now I owe $230 instead of $192 for my hygiene visit. It's just going to give the patients a sour taste in their mouth.
They're going to just pull out their phone and start looking on you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just don't want to do that. So, if it's a PPO practice, I mean, number one, your fee schedule doesn't matter just a whole ton because you're getting contracted fees, for the most part. So, the patients are going to notice in a PPO practice. They're going to notice. I mean, you're basically not going to notice if you change your fees. But, in a fee-for-service practice, you do need to be careful that you don't go in and throw a huge raise on your hygiene codes. That way, you need to have a goal. I mean, if your goal is $75 for a pro fee or 90 or 80 or whatever it is, then you're at 60. You need to just slowly get there, 5%, 5%, 5% until you get to where you want over time instead of just going and throwing it up there day one, ripping the Band-Aid off. So.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So we've hit insurance, we've hit fees, we've hit getting legal. What about, you had a subnote here, organizing changes. It was talking about conversion and the soft. Oh, okay. So say you're switching to open dental. What does that mean to do a conversion test? Yeah,
I kind of threw that in there. I'll be real quick on that, but it's we want to be sure that when I talked about, I kind of got started talking about these changes and things you want to do, within the practice, changing your IT and all that. But also you need to have a good timeline and you need to organize these changes, because you're going to sign this thing probably a month before your close. And you're going to have, if you're going to change the software, or you're going to change sensors, or you're going to change, these things. You need to get this software on these computers, at least a test version or some kind of training, whatever, for your new employees that you're going to have to be able to get used to the software, get used to the things that you're doing. Open Dental has great webinars online. You don't even really have to have the test conversion to get an idea of what's going on within Open Dental. So, that way you can look at the data that's going to be on there, see what it looks like. Employees can play around on it. They can get a feel for what's going on. So just as a quick aside, a quick thought here, if you're going to change these IT, you're going to make these changes, you're going to do this, even if, God forbid, you're going to move a chair around, whatever. But just be sure that you have a date, you have Excel sheet, whatever you need to get your dates organized, to be sure that, when you're doing these things, that you're doing it in an organized fashion, and your employees are understanding what's going on, and they're not just totally thrown into the wolves on software and IT day one.
Sure. No, fair enough. And especially if you're drinking the Kool-Aid on Open Dental like the rest of us.
Absolutely.
So
good Kool-Aid, man.
The next point you had here was your internet presence and your marketing. So it's these little things that you don't think about. So you talked about like just even social media. So what are the important things there?
Oh man, we're so bad marketers. We've historically, that's probably been our worst, our worst quality is our ability to be marketable and advertise and try to do that properly. We're getting steamrolled by a lot of companies that are, our size and their marketing strategies and internet presence, but we're getting better. So I will delve into a few things that you need to be sure you do. People that are, dental students and young dentists, heck, these are, you're going to know probably more about this already than I do, but, if the office name's staying the same, you're buying the office, you need to gain access to that Facebook page, website, Google Plus page, whatever it is, update it. Be sure you have it. Be sure it's there. Be sure it's findable. All those good things when it comes to your internet presence. You're going to have a new name. We need to make your changes to the website. Make your changes. Absolutely. Get your brand out there. If you have an old Google Plus page, it's unclaimed, go claim the old page, because the more presence on the internet, the better, man. Whatever you can get on there, get it. Old page unclaimed, get it. So, that's kind of the short version on that. Just be sure that you have access to those things. Be sure that when you close, that you've got those things changed that you need to change if you're changing anything. At the very least, making a post, hey, new dentist partner, I don't like to really, unless the seller's passionate about telling the patients that he sold. I like to introduce ourselves or the new doctor as a new partner, we're expanding to better serve the community type thing. Don't say, hey, the practice is sold, on Facebook, headline. Let's not try to do that. Let's try to ease our way into it a little bit. Try to, especially if you're buying a high goodwill practice, to really, Facebook pages and websites and stuff like that are a good way to introduce your face to the patient base, so that whenever they walk in there, it's not the first time that they've seen your mug. They've seen you on Facebook, they've seen you on the website, and now when they see you in the chair, it's a lot less of a shock.
No, totally. Absolutely makes sense. So now that you've got kind of the control of those pages and the online presence, one of the biggest concerns for me and for a lot of people I've talked with is kind of what to do with the staff. Like, how do you start off on the right foot? And if there's obviously someone that needs to go, like, how do you do that, and when? How do you even know? How do you interview them? Like, what are your steps for kind of meeting, filtering, and deciding what to do with the staff when you come into that practice?
Absolutely. Obviously, we want to try to keep the staff if at all possible.
Okay.
I don't really know what else to say beyond that when it comes to try to keep the staff. Let's just, when it comes to percentages and you're looking at a profit and loss statement, trying to figure out how much this staff makes. So you're walking into an old practice with staff that's makes 45% of collections or whatever, man, sure. You may just need to let that practice go. It may just not be a good fit for you. If you think that you've got to go in and fire the staff or let go 2 people or greatly decrease this or that, it's probably something that you need to walk away from. A staff percent at over 35% is basically a no for us.
Yeah.
If we look at it and it says 37, we may look a little bit further, but that is a gigantic red flag. If, to the point of, if you see it, I don't even care what else is going on in the profit and loss statement. If you see over 35%, let's go to the next one. Unless it's something that you have to have, or it's in the best location ever in the world, or it's somewhere where you just absolutely have to live, and he's the only dentist there, then consider it maybe.
Sure,
but
still,
if you got to go in, if you got to go and fire staff, man, you're already, you're at a disadvantage already. I mean, you want to look at that profit and loss, and you want to see that staff number about 25%, the 27%, even in some areas. We talked to Dr. Costas about that. He's in California, area like that is just going to be more. So 30% in some areas is fine, but we just want to practice where you can keep everybody at their current rate, so that you can look at them and hire them and keep them there and get them to where that they're excited about bringing you into the practice and telling the patients, this is Dr. So-and-so, he's going to be great. And then you don't leave a sour taste in anybody's mouth. Sure. There may be one person you've got to cut, or, even the doctor may tell you, look, hey, I've wanted to fire this girl forever, but I just hadn't got hadn't been able to do it for whatever reason, but that may be somewhere you need to let go of somebody or at that point, or not hire them. That's kind of important to understand too, is that, when you, as a new practice owner, the employees need to know that you are hiring them, you're choosing boss. Them, you're the boss, and you're choosing them to be your employees.
So
you didn't buy.
Do you re-interview them every time? Have you guys done that versus kind of like, they know that they're probably keeping your jobs, and you kind of know, and so we
tell them they're keeping their jobs. Yeah, we tell them, hey, look, we're going to hire everybody back, but we typically do have individual meetings. If we think there's things that need to be changed from like if we need to change the way they're paid, even if it's not like a cut, or if we're just changing them to a percent, if we're changing a hygienist to a percent commission or whatever, we'll have individual meetings with each employee, when we buy the practice. But, at the first time you're laying eyes on them, you're going to tell them, like, hey, we're going to keep everybody, don't worry about it. And then you may change the way it's structured slightly, or you may not. You may keep everybody the way it is, but that's ideal. I mean, sure. If everybody's properly paid and you get to just walk in and say, hey, let's have a big love fest. Everybody's getting paid the same. I'm going to be here a long time. Let's all make it a career out of it. That's ideal, And because what's going to happen is you're hiring them onto your new entity. You're paying them from a different entity. So, you have the choice to not hire them. If you don't bring on an employee, they're going to feel like they were fired. But that's not necessarily true. You just chose not to hire that particular employee. So that way, it feels a little bit different. If they don't become rehired, you won't have to pay them unemployment or anything like that. Sure. So, if you need to make staff changes at the beginning, do it at the very beginning. But ideally, you get to have an all warm and fuzzy office meeting, and everybody gets to be happy and sing Kumbaya, and everybody keeps their money. So,
okay. So, in terms of like when things go wrong, kind of having clear policies, having an office manual. Have you seen any decent office manuals when you've come into these practices?
Say zero. Yeah, it's super important though. I mean, dude.
And do you feel like this is one on here? You mentioned one of the things I loved you mentioned is that it's not a contract. It can be changed at whatever point you need it to change as the employer. But how necessary is it to have this before the practice starts? Because obviously some of these practices are surviving without it. But is this something
for sure
that you put in place every time, or is this one of those
more important? Yeah, it's more important as an absentee owner, obviously, to have clear policies on things, so you don't have to deal with it. I mean, if you don't have it written down, how many vacation sick days they're going to get, that's not the end of the world. But they're going to ask you, how many do I get? Well, look at the office manual. You know what I mean? It just decreases the amount of things that you're going to have to do. Yeah. I mean, we've had an early situation, where, we didn't have our attendance policy, didn't have a clear attendance policy in the office manual. So you got to pay unemployment for somebody that you fired because they didn't show up to work. Literally didn't show up. I mean, multiple times, warning, and then fired. And then, we had to pay out unemployment because we didn't have a clear attendance policy in our office manual. So, I mean, it costs you money, that way. I mean, now your unemployment rate's higher because you didn't have a signed office manual stating, hey, I know I have to show up to work. Should be fairly self-explanatory. However, it's not. I mean, you got to have everything on there. Plus, especially coming in and doing things differently, how they're paid, method and frequency is important to have in an office manual. you need to have, you definitely need to have a confidentiality agreement. Even if you don't have an office manual, you need to have somewhere where they sign and say, I'm not going to share information about patient records outside of the office, and that way you're protected from that front. And, that way when they sign it too, they know the importance of not talking about those things outside of the office, and they get a little ownership over that. So also, yeah, job descriptions are super important. You need to have them out there. That way, mostly not for the people that are there too, but mostly for if you need to have a new hire, you have assistant leave, you got a new assistant coming in, boom, you got their job description right down here. These are the things you're going to do on a daily basis. These are the things that you are responsible for. These are the things that I expect you to be done. If these things aren't done, this is your job description. I mean, this is grounds for termination. If this thing is on your job description, you signed your job description, yet it's not getting done, well, then you have a way to go back and say, why aren't you doing that? I mean, here it is. It's black and white. At the end of every day, you're supposed to get all the lab cases boxed up. This is the 8th time that I've came back here and there's lab cases before we leave. That your job description is right here written down. You need to do these things, in order to keep your job. So,
sure.
An office manual is just, what's the number one thing probably when you hear people talk about owning practice? What is the thing they say that the biggest headache is? They're always going to say the staff.
Their team, the staff, yeah.
Absolutely. Always, so what an office manual does is it just decreases that headache for you. In an individual practice, it's not it's not necessary. I mean, to run a practice, to have a profitable practice, to, have a good practice. It's not necessary to have an office manual. It's necessary if you're going to have multiple practices that you're not at all the time, you don't want to deal with it. But, if you want a well-oiled machine, you look at all these practices, you look at these guys that run, well-oiled machine offices. I mean, they're going to have office manuals. It's another step in the right direction of owning your business and, taking ownership over your practice and your employees. I mean, you're paying these people lots of money. It's going to be your biggest expense is your staff, and you need to have it to where, you're organized and all these things are in there, so that you can refer to this. And number one, if you need to fire somebody, that you have a leg to stand on. So
I mentioned in a previous episode that one of our biggest issues right now as young dentists and dental students is our student loan debt. It is one of the main reasons why we strive at Shared Practices to navigate the path to successful practice ownership. We aim to help our audience by doing everything we can to help you earn a great income as a dentist. It has always been my advice to tackle your student loan debt by refinancing your loans after becoming a practice owner with a stable income. Doing this allows you to avoid paying too much on your monthly interest. The key to refinancing your loans is selecting an experienced lender that will offer you a competitive interest rate. Did you know that most student loans charge the same rate regardless of how creditworthy you are? So chances are, as dentists, you're probably paying too much in monthly interest. Laurel Road, a division of Darien Rowan Bank, is a national leader in student lending. Laurel Road has helped medical professionals across the country refinance their federal and private dental school debt, saving thousands on interest over the life of their loans. Not only do they offer great terms and great service, ADA members receive an additional 0.25% rate discount on top of their new and already low rate for as long as they remain an ADA member. Fill out a 2-minute application and get pre-approved rates instantly if you are eligible. It's free to apply and there's no obligation to accept. For more information specific to your needs as a dentist and to submit an application, simply visit www.laurelroad.com/sharedpractices. Again, that is LAURELROAD.com/sharedpractices. Laurel Road is an equal housing and opportunity lender. All rates are subject to eligibility. Savings may vary. This is a paid promotion of student loan refinancing by Laurel Road.
Well, and it seems like this is where, for you guys, the multi-practice model begins to scale, because you don't have to go back and remake all of these decisions. Now that you have them on paper, you can transfer those over, and whether or not you have to, really enforce it and stick to it up front to make sure people understand, okay, this is what it is. But at least you guys don't have to make all these little choices again every time you buy a new practice.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we have a packet, that we have a employee information in, all the things that are going to change. Then we have the office manual in. I mean, that way, I mean, we kind of go over the office manual, but
Sure.
I mean, you think about the whirlwind that's happening when you close this practice. You're going to say, "Oh, you get this many vacation, this many sick days. This is, signs. This is what happens when this. This is how you're going to get paid." If it's not written down, you're just going to be constantly answering questions about it, and the employees are not going to know what's going on. And if it's written down, organized fashion, hand it to them. Yeah, you can go over it, but at the same time, when they leave and go home, and they're wondering what in the world just happened, they can go back into the manual and figure out what's going on, and they'll feel more comfortable about it. You're going to feel better about it because it's down on paper, and that's the way things are going to go. And especially if you scale, you plan to have multiple practices. I mean, you're going to walk in, and when you have that, that second meeting for your second practice, it's going to go so much smoother. So.
No, absolutely. Well, okay, so now getting into just kind of last few things here. We've got implementation of policies and hygiene. So what do you mean when you talk about provider codes, treatment plan presentations, scheduling? Why are these things that you put on your priority list?
Yeah, so provider codes are probably the most important thing when it comes to paying somebody by production. It's not as important if you're going to be the sole owner of the practice, and you're going to get all the money.
There's no other
really,
dentist working.
No
there.
No other dentist working there.
But
that's typically
does each hygienist get their own provider code? Because this is all in the software. Like, it's just in Open Dental. There's a provider code that gets attached to
a procedure. Okay. Exactly. So in each practice management software, each provider is going to have their own unique code. And it's going to be attached to every single procedure that's completed and treatment plan and completed within the office. And the way we do it, and I think the way that should be done, is every single provider that you have within the office has their own unique provider code. And when they do a procedure, that gets completed under that provider code. So at the end of the day, end of the month, at the end of the year, how much that this provider produced and collected. Because a lot of times what people do is they'll send it out under the provider code, and then when the money comes in, they'll just post it to whoever they want. Well, I mean, that's, I want to know what each provider's, what are they collecting versus what they produce, for lots of reasons. You want to know the overall write-off number. You want to know if your accounts receivable, if somebody's, higher than the, other, why is that? What's going on? Is there an issue with the insurance company? So you need to have each provider codes. It's the literal most important thing. If you have your seller doc there and you're paying him on a % commission,
sure,
then it has to be perfect, because that's livelihood, man. It's money that you're spending. That's what he makes. So it has to be perfect, so you've got to have these provider codes in, you've got to complete the codes correctly. And that way, even if it's just yourself and it's just a practice that you have and there's no other dentist working there, you don't have to pay anybody on commission. Having the provider codes in there correctly is going to allow you to have a better understanding of your percents within your practice, because they can tell you things. If the doctor versus hygiene percent, I'm sure you've heard Hunter talk about, but it'll tell you if you're a higher doctor percent practice, that means typically you're doing more specialty procedures. You're doing, you're getting the most out of your hygiene department that you can. If you look up and you're 60% doctor, 40% hygiene, all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Is there something going on with diagnosis? Are we not presenting our treatment the correct way up front? Why is our doctor production so much, lower as a percent than what we feel like it should be? It may not be anything, but those are key indicators that are going to allow you to figure out what's going on in your practice, and maybe there's something going on that's not good. And also, you're providing, if your doctor percent super high, is your hygiene doing what they should do? Are they taking necessary x-rays? They're taking pans when they should, doing sealants when they should, all those little things. If you're a couple percentage points higher, it may just point you in the direction you find an error like that you need to correct. But yeah, if you're absentee owner and you're paying people on production, it's the literal most important thing is to have provider codes in and have your staff doing it correctly. Moving on to treatment plan presentation, it's we encourage prepayment by offering percent discount. I think
when you say prepayment, you're saying say they need 4 different quads of different restorative crown fillings, you get them to pay right up front for all of that?
Yeah, for sure.
Or we
typically phase it. We don't do that. We try to stay away from that pay as you go. From the each time. Each time the patient pays something, we typically try to get patients pay in phases. We typically try to phase out treatment, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or whatever. If they've got a bunch of extractions as phase 1, they pay up front. When they get the treatment plan, they're going to get a 5% discount. And then they get that treatment done, and then okay, now here's phase 2. They prepay for phase 2 and get a discount. And that way, here's what we're trying to do here. This is the overall the takeaway from treatment plan presentation is we want to decrease the amount of no-shows within your practice, and we want to decrease the financial stress on your patient. Number one, if they already have their treatment taken care of, as far as from a prepayment standpoint, they got their discount, it's been paid for. Number one, they're going to be less likely. They're going to be essentially unlikely to no-show, because with it already taken care of, when patients no-show, it's because they typically have, a reason. Most of the reason why they don't come is because they're going to have to pay you money. So if you've already got it taken care of, then your no-show rate's going to go down. Patients are going to be happier that it's taken care of, and they're going to get a discount. So, when a patient prepays for treatment, gets that discount, man, everybody wins. Patient wins, they get a 5% discount. You win because the money's taken care of on the front end, and you know that the patient's going to be way more likely to show back up, for that next appointment. And even if they can't pay that full prepayment at the beginning, not everybody can completely understand that.
Sure.
We need to try to do something to where they have a financial arrangement in place. We prefer to do like a 3-month auto draft finance plan where you break up that phase over 3 months. That way, it's just getting auto drafted off a card every time when they come in.
Right.
They're not they don't have a mouthful of gauze trying to pay you and all that kind of stuff. It's already taken care of. You've got it figured out. You know what's going on. Patients aware of what's happening, and the money's been taken care of. Even if it's not paid yet, the financial aspect has been taken care of.
Sure.
So,
well, one of the things you mentioned there was provider time scheduling. You still as big of a proponent of that?
It's great in theory. It really is. And over time, the more doctors that I come in contact with, the more practices we have, the more we see scheduling a different way. I don't know, man. If we could find somebody that could figure out a way to schedule a practice perfectly, I'd love to find it. It's provider time seems great. Just a quick intro to provider time to all the guys out there that aren't familiar with it. Basically, it's a way where you stagger your columns to where you have an appointment within an appointment, essentially, where you have a assistant time at the beginning, then provider time in the middle of the appointment, and then assistant time at the end. That way, the provider, when he gets done, he moves into another room and then moves back. And, man, I'll just say scheduling. You want to try to do that to the best of your ability. You want to try to stagger your schedule to where, you have your providers they're not double booked, but they're not crazy spaced out either. But there's a million ways to schedule. I'm not going to tell you how to schedule.
Sure.
Some people are happier in one column, one operatory straight down, so they can go drink coffee and sit on Nilltown for 20 minutes in between patients. Hey, man, have freaking at it, So do your thing. Do what makes you happy. But, provider time scheduling, if you can sort of get that way to where you're staggering your columns, you have you have assistant time, and you have an unproductive operatory where it's mostly assistant time, and in your operatory and your staggered operatories, where you can bounce back and forth a little bit, and you get a nice groove where your front office knows how long it takes you to do those procedures. And that's the most beneficial. That's how you're going to be the most profitable. That's how you're going to see the most patients, and the patients are not going to have to wait, and your practice just rolls, So.
Well, I think we're gonna have to take a break because I have a child who woke up here. But
that's awesome, man. Look at it. Hey, that's perfect time.
Yeah, she's right next to the podcasting studio. So this has been awesome. Thanks for coming back on the show, and we're gonna have you one last time for closing and post closing. I'll probably have to re-record this.
Hey, no, that's great, man. Hey, I'm in. Do it. I'm in for whatever. Thanks,
Awesome.
Richard. All right.
Cool. Hey, have a good night. We'll see you.
All right, Richard. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. See you, dude.
Okay, George. So what's your timeline? Where are you at in this process, this deep in the weeds of holy crap, let's actually acquire this practice?
So now that you guys have listened to both parts of Will's interview, I think it's more fitting for me to kind of talk about where I'm at and maybe some things that changed my timeline a little bit. So Will talked about, the pre-purchase agreement, the LOI in the first episode, and that's currently where I'm at. And my sellers and I, we have a very, it's more than a loose agreement now. We have a good idea of where everything is going and what the terms are going to be. And so there was a part of me that we talked about just skipping straight to the purchase agreement, but we decided to take a step back and do an LOI. And so that's what we're doing right now. But a lot of the terms of the purchase agreement are being put into the LOI. So it's something like an LOI plus, I guess you could say. But the conversation that I think was most relevant to me in this episode was the insurance credentialing piece. And I think that's a big part of an acquisition of a PPO practice, which is what my wife and I will be purchasing.
Yeah.
And so for us, we'll be graduating end of May. And our initial plan and what we had put in our initial contract was that we would close on like June 30th was the day that we had discussed. And I actually switched lawyers to Rob Montgomery. And I had talked to him, and he told me, you're not really giving yourself enough time to credential with insurance.
Right.
And, I had told him, and, something that I had learned on the podcast where I was going to just adjust the fees like we had talked about with Marie Chatterley. But he really explained to me that it might be a better idea to push it back an additional month. And then we would close July 30th, and that would give me enough time. I think it's 31st, actually, July 31st. And that would give us enough time to credential with the insurance companies. And then what he had suggested we do is go work in the practice right after graduation as associates for 2 months, where then we would be billing under the seller's credentials for those 2 months. And then we would switch to our credentials employing the seller after the sale. So that's currently the plan.
Nice. I didn't realize you'd switch that up. I also didn't realize that you'd switch to Rob Montgomery. So when did that happen?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that in our season outro. But yeah, no, it happened. And I don't know. It's weird. I in the course of this season, I have switched all of my professionals. Before I worked with you, I had my professionals lined up, and I have changed every single one of them in the course of the last year. So that's been fun.
So we'll let that be a little cliffhanger for the wrap-up episode. So we're going to do an episode where we take a look at all of this journey of an acquisition that we've gone through in this season, kind of wrap up our takeaways, how it's changed our perspective and apparently changed all of our professionals, and why that ended up happening. I think it'll be a lot of value to kind of just drive all this in. And if it's been a long time, which it's kind of been a long season, I think this will summarize it and help people remember some really good takeaways for their acquisition. So coming soon, I think it'll be about 2 or 3 episodes from this. We'll do that wrap up episode.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. We will talk with you guys next week on the Shared Practices podcast.